And now, all right. Welcome, everyone. Can hear me? Sort of. Welcome to OPSAWG, the Ops Area Working Group, combined with Ops Area at the IETF 120. Thank you all for being here. Let's get started so we can get into our program. Does that work? Everything you do here is subject to the note well, so note it well. In particular, this is about how you participate, what you say is on record, and also how you come off to other people. We are an organization that likes to treat people with respect, so we ask that you focus on the work, you focus on the technical, you focus on the professional details of things. This working group has had a great history of being respectful, and you work with your colleagues to hopefully achieve something great. So focus on the work and be aware that what you say, again, is on record and subject to the note well. And that's the note really well, is the you have recourse if you do feel you are being harassed. We have an ombuds team, but again, this working group, I've been very proud to say, has had a good history of working well together and being respectful of each other. So we are in person. For those of you in the room, for those of you online, welcome as well. We want to make sure that everyone is equally participating in these meetings. So if you are here in person, make sure you do scan the QR code. You can see it over there on the left, and get into the Meet Echo queue or Meet Echo tool, either on your phone or the full tool on your laptop. If you do join on your laptop, make sure you don't unmute your audio. And if you have a question, want to get to the mic, just join the queue in the app, and then we will call you up to the mic in order. For remote participants, you're probably already using the Meet Echo tool, and if you do want to get in the queue, you can just raise your hand to get in the queue. New to this meeting, we have the ability to moderate the room. Again, I've been very fortunate. We've been very fortunate that no one has been very disruptive, so hopefully we won't have to break out the new room moderation tool, and we can all participate equally and respectfully. We have an agenda. We'll go over it briefly soon. We've already talked through the Meet Echo stuff, and I sent out a preparation link ahead of time. And if there are any issues, you know how to report them. This also includes things like the network. We also take that into account as well. Henk and I are your chairs today. We're your hosts. Welcome again. For those of you on Zulip, the Jabber, does anyone want to scribe or go to the mic and ask a question on behalf of someone who chats it? Anyone willing to do that? Just be like a proxy voice. Please? Anyone? Man. Okay. Henk, watch the thing. Okay. Yeah, sorry, that was my fault. Meet Echo-OR, not Singapore. I guess Oregon, not Singapore. Minute takers. We do need minute takers to jump on into our notes. I've already set the notes up with the agenda. Who will volunteer to take minutes for us? Jean Kilboff, excellent. Rob, you're off the hook for once.
Oh, yeah. Happy for any help.
But it is a collaborative tool. If anyone wants to jump in and help Jean out, please feel free to do so. A new slide. I just want to spend a moment on this. If anyone is out there thinking, man, I wish I could do more for the IETF and more for OPSAWG or Ops in general, there are opportunities for you. First of all, you can act as a document shepherd. And I am very grateful for the people who jumped in on the recent attachment circuits work to do that. You can, at any point, if you feel like you want to act as a shepherd, to kind of defend a document, to get a document through the process. It is a great way to get to know how the IETF publishing process works, and we're always happy to welcome new shepherds. Likewise, there is a group called the Ops Area Directorate or Ops Directorate, and their work is to help the area directors out. This is an opportunity to read drafts across the entire IETF spectrum with an operator hat on to try and say, does this draft introduce any complexities, any challenges for operators? Are they thinking through the operator challenges here? This might sound like it's daunting work, but I took two examples from various ops directorate members. It can be as easy as, I've read this document, I'm happy with the new version, it's ready to go from an operator standpoint. You may find that, hey, there are issues here and I want to call them out. And you can do that, and now you're part of the process, and Warren is great at thanking you for all of your reviews as Ops Directorate. So if you're saying, well, I'm not really ready to do like chair type stuff, but I do want to get more involved in the IETF, Ops Directorate is a great way to do it. And again, you will get a vast perspective of the work that happens in the IETF. If you're interested in this, see our two Ops Area Directors, Warren or Mahesh. Oh, Warren, you had a, yeah.
Thank you. I was going to do this during the ops area time, but this felt like a better spot. Speaking of volunteering, if anybody is interested in serving as the ops area director, the 2024 NOMCOM cycle is just starting up. Please come along and chat with me. I'm more than happy to give you all sort of information on what the IESG is actually like, time commitments, you know, how fun it is, what you get to learn, etc. So always happy to chat. Thank you.
Thanks, Warren. In terms of our work, we had no new RFCs published since Brisbane, since 119. We have one, the Redux or BIS to 9092 in the RFC editor queue. And there are some that have been, many that have been sent to IESG for publication in various states. And I see that work has been happening on these even after the slide was created. So this just gives you an idea. Some of this I don't know that we'll get an update on any of these today, but they are making progress, and I do appreciate the authors being responsive. We have a lot of drafts in process as working group items, some of which we will hear from today. There are two that I did want to call out. The TACAX TLS draft recently finished working group last call, but some issues were pointed out that need some author attention, and the authors are very much aware, and thankfully they're looking for feedback, specifically external PSKs, what to do with that. So if you have thoughts on this, the authors sent a request for comment or comments to the list. Please provide feedback to them so we can move this forward, and we'll do another working group last call when some of those issues shake out. MUD acceptable URLs was returned to the working group by Mahesh to us, and once another short working group last call that I think, Hank, you're going to kick off?
Yeah,
cool.
After the meeting.
After the meeting, they'll kick that off. Excellent. So those are two that stand out as in progress work. In terms of agenda bashing, hopefully everyone has bashed it enough since we were good on dates this time and we met our draft and final agenda dates. We're going to hear from some working group items up front from Benoit, John, Jean, Giuseppe, Med, or Giuseppe, and then some non-working group items from Med, Diego, Chaude, Jihun, and Victor. Then we actually have an ops area item. Benoit will get back up here and talk to us about a redux of the management requirements workshop that the IAB has been working on. So that's pretty exciting. And then we'll have some open mics. So we encourage you to pepper our ops area directors with questions. Bashing. Any other thoughts?
I think we're good to go. I think the time for open mic is ample in this time frame. So let's start, but we will keep everybody in their box. So there will be a timer.
And with that, I think we have Benoit. You're up first. And you can control your own slides. Okay, I'll control your slides.
Next.
So good morning. So this one is about exporting IPFix, exporting delay information in IPFix. Last slide, please.
Yeah.
So it's a brief summary of what we did. So as I mentioned, exporting delay in IPFix, a one-way delay. We received great feedback from many people. So we received feedback from Politcom, designated expert for IPFix registry. Receive feedback from Greg, designated expert as IP performance metric. Receive feedback from Ayana, and Matt read-proofed the document. So why is it important to receive this feedback? Because it's the first IETF draft that has metrics, performance metrics in one registry, and at the same time, the IPFix information elements. So what we receive as feedback mainly is that, okay, we want to make it more generic. It was mainly too focused on IOAM. Now this is focused on the draft from Carlos and Adrian, I think, about the OAM terminology. So based on this feedback, which I consider kind of last call, because whenever you receive feedback from the expert, from Ayana, from everybody, then we're good. So we published a new version yesterday. And basically, this is kind of almost done for us. I mean, up to you, the chairs, to start last call, but this is anyway last call type of comments. So that's the situation.
Yeah. Questions, comments? I agree. I think you guys have been very responsive, and I think we can call working group last call after this.
Very good. Thank you. And I save you time. I know you like this.
This is solid.
John, I think you were remote. I see you popping up, but you're muted. Do I have to unmute him? No? I can revoke audio. But...
Oh, is reconnecting?
It's muted. Audio published. He's a participant. We can't hear you, John. I gave him control. There he comes.
Mm-hmm.
No audio. What am I missing?
On my side is audio.
Yeah, it says. Well, he's not asking to send anything. John, you have control. You are a participant. We just can't hear you.
So his screen and
Yeah.
it's a local site technical problem, I guess.
Hold on. Some audio issues here. Please move to the next one and I'll try to, okay. So we're gonna come back to John. I thought I was doing it more or less right. Okay, so Jean. And you can control your own slides if you so desire.
Thank you very much. Okay. Hello, so I'm Jean. I'm going to present the updates on the draft about the data manifest for the telemetry data. on behalf of the authors. Joe, why?
I'm in the,
Is it focused?
it's focused. No? Okay.
Yeah, now it works.
Very
What's
good.
one of you?
So yeah, so basically the goal of the, going quickly because these are the same slides as the last time. So the goal about the data manifest is to recall how the data was collected, what were the telemetry options, and so on, so that whenever later we get this data from a database, we are able to understand why we have these data points, maybe why some are missing or why some are there. So this is the goal of this draft.
Here, I'll just click through it for you.
Thank you.
There's a-
So the example is if you have a data point and then you don't have anything, it can be because there is a bug. It can be because you actually have an unchanged subscription and there was no change. Or it can be that you have some option to say, I don't want to, I want to get every, I don't know, every day the data, and so it's been less than a day. So basically, the goal is to be able to capture this information. Next slide, please. So our proposal is to have, on one end, the platform manifest, on the other end, the data manifest. So the platform manifest tells you basically the information about the platform, with the vendor and so on, what models are supported, and the data collection tells you how the data is collected. So next slide, please. So the changes that I've done to this draft is, so before we were using a lot of copy pasting to build the Young module because we wanted to reuse the information about the data collection that is already in the Young push model. We wanted to reuse the Young library with augmentation, and that was not easy to do in Young without doing copy pasting. So in the meantime, we came up with another draft to do this kind of full inclusion of a model, which is still being discussed. And so what I did is, in this version, I finally replaced the Young module with the draft with this new extension to give an idea of how it would look like. And since this draft is basically based on the Young schema mount, I also provided all the files so that we can use, let's say, the schema mount to simulate how it would look like. And that's also the fallback plan. So basically for schema mount, what you do is you specify a mount point, and then you say, in this mount point, I will use this Young library to define the content of this mount point. And so what we propose here as a fallback plan is we would enforce this Young library to be used in the case of this particular module. So this is the big change, and I put all the support file in the appendix. So I don't think they need to stay in the final version of the draft, but it's there in case anybody wants to see how it looks like. Next slide, please. So yeah, so there is another draft which focuses on the data collection, and I think actually the two topics, the two scopes of the draft are a little bit different. So actually, I thought about it, and I think how to answer this question. What I would say is the draft from Jan is more about having a global picture of the data processing. So it's more like the data lineage. Whenever you get the data, you don't only know how it was collected, but you also know all the operation that it went through in order to obtain the data that you see in your at the end. In our case, I think we have a more restricted focus. We are focusing only on the collection. So maybe a way to combine the two would be to say, in the philatelist draft, we have only basic information about the collection, and maybe that's enough for your use case. But if you want to have more data about the collection, for instance, all the young push information, then you could use what we are proposing here. And that would be how these two drafts would work together. Next slide, please. So we have actually some work to be done on the link with the inventory, but it's actually ongoing. We should have that for the next meeting. And otherwise, I think we are pretty much done with this draft. So there is still the issue of the young, how to express the young, but except of that, I think we have pretty much everything, and we just need to polish the draft. Any questions?
Looks like you've got some in the queue.
Mhm.
Benoit. So I've not spoken with the authors yet about this, but there is a normative reference to the full include, which was put in NetMod yesterday, and that received a gentle go away, meaning that, oh, maybe you should just update this one. Now, the thing I was trying to say yesterday is that either we do the full include now or we don't. So maybe, since this draft is ready, I propose that we remove the full include, maybe put an appendix there. So if it ever happened in NetMod, fine, but we don't block this document with the full include that's going to come over and over until it's maybe part of the annex.
Fine with me.
I think we have Jan.
Thank you. So I think this is interesting work, and the primary reason I haven't done much in this space in the philatelist draft is that I know that you're working on it. So I expect to combine this work in the future in some way. So I'm looking forward to see how we can make sure that they fit together. And also for Benoit, I was not quite as I didn't have the same read from the NetMod meeting yesterday that it was a go away for the full include. Not that hard anyway. So maybe there is some hope. But of course, there's many mount drafts around right now, so we need to merge them somehow. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, Med. Oh, you want to?
I can do it also.
Essentially, Med echoed what Benoit said, and as a chair, I was going to ask the question: what is your cutoff date for when you would pull out full include and go a schema mount? And I like Benoit and Med's proposal. I think that's a way to move forward. And Jan addressed my other thing of how philately, like what's happening with that work. So.
Okay.
Another question? Thanks.
Thank you. So Jonas seems to be fine.
Yep. Okay, John.
Okay, just testing. You can hear me now.
We can. I'll
Great.
slide control if you want.
Oh, excellent. Thank you very much.
Let's see. Nope.
And we can see you.
Yep, and we can see you.
Great. Hi, everyone.
And I can't give you slide. Just go ahead and I'll take
Okay.
it.
So, slide 2, please. Yeah.
There you go. I give it to you now.
Oh, okay. Great stuff. Thank you. There we go. So I think substantive updates since we first published the draft, which I think as a working group draft, which was back in January, if I recall. I think one of the areas for discussion around this particular piece of work is that what we're presenting is an information model for how we report packet loss, not a data model. And the reason for being an information model is there are many ways that we could expose this. So we can expose this via Yang, we can expose this via a prefix. There are different ways that we could do it. So the idea was to come up with a implementation agnostic way of expressing the way that we should expose and classify packet loss without actually defining the implementation method. So a question then is, well, how do you express an information model? And we went through a couple of iterations, but based on feedback from Med, since we first published the draft, was to do it as an abstract data structure in Yang. So that's the substantive change that we've made using the RFC 8791 extensions since we first published the draft. The rest of the structure hasn't. There have been edits in it, but the rest of the structure hasn't fundamentally changed. If we, and this slide hasn't come out very well, apologies for that. If we go forward then to what do we do with the data model, with the information model, I think one point we're very cognizant of is there's no point in defining an information model if that information doesn't exist, and especially as we're talking about exposing packet loss reporting from hardware, which takes multiple years to develop. So, so in terms of actually what's required to realize the data model after the information model, we have to be able to look at the underlying hardware counters on devices. Depending upon devices, that can be certainly the ones we've looked at, between 64 to 256 discrete drop counters, and that's, sorry, discrete types of drop counters, which may then even be multiplied by line cards and so forth. Got to map those to the discard classes that we present in the information model, and then ultimately expose that as some data to be defined data model. So in that, sorry, go back. In that first phase, we've got the mapping of, essentially mapping of hardware counters to classes. And that piece we have, I think, some confidence in now that the information generally exists. So we've certainly verified that across a number of platforms where we've been through that process of mapping underlying hardware counters to those discard classes. So that gives us a degree of confidence that the information that's presented in the information model is information that exists. It's not net new information that that vendors are going to have to implement. It's obviously not an exhaustive list, but it's it's certainly quite a bit of coverage. Slide, if you forgive the slide again. So from that point, then, with the realization of the information model is in one or more data models, which is obviously subsequent work. But I think the broader question for this team then is, what else does the working group believe is required of this information model draft in order to round it out? And I'm sure there'll be some discussions around information model versus data model.
Looks like Rob's getting in the queue.
Gosh, this mic, is it on? I think so. So this is a long way back. So I was just looking at the draft now quickly. I had one quick question. I can't answer your question as what needs to be done, but in terms of the model, it uses 48-bit counters in places, which is an unusual choice. Most of the implementations I've seen have gone either 32 or 64 bits. I'm wondering if there's a good reason for doing that. I know it's an information model, but where you can then use it directly.
Yeah. I think that's a valid question, and I guess the original definition had 64-bit, and then the feedback we got from several vendors was 64-bit across all those counters is more than is needed for those things that don't increment with a high rate. So, for example, if you've got a some error discard counters increment at a very, very low rate and don't need the full 64-bit. So we went down to 48, but that wasn't because that was really dropping from 64 to something else, not that those specific counters needed 48. It was more an indication that they didn't need 64. So I think that's a valid question, Robert. Open for feedback.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably choose 32 for the ones that are smaller. That I think for our drop counters, that was my experience. Don't know for the high-speed interfaces where it changes, but we normally have either gone with 32-bit counters or we jump up to 64-bit if it's like a higher rate.
Yeah, and I think that's fair comment. And things when we're talking when we're counting packet discards of rare errors, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, John. This is Diego. That I was nominated as shepherd by Henk. So far, the only thing I offered to you was apologies for the delay. Basically, I mean, looking at it and having time to read it, I believe that this work, I would say that I don't see many things that are required. Well, there will be needs like the one Rob was highlighting that are, let's say, unusual. But precisely the unusual nature of this work is something that I believe is quite interesting. For a very long time, we were talking about don't do information models because we are, and having or exploring a way of making a formal definition of information models using Yang is a quite interesting result. Apart from the my throat, the air conditioning is killing me. It's a quite interesting way of going beyond in something that is happening right now in Yang, that is about thinking in terms as well of different levels of abstraction to talk about the same thing, consistently using the language. Yesterday during the NetMod, Kent was talking about the idea of going Yang 2, etc. And probably this could be a interesting way to start thinking about it. So I put this in written and go in more detail, but I wanted to share this here.
Yeah, thanks, Diego.
Thomas speaking. First of all, great work. I think the model looks fairly complete, very well thought of. So thanks a lot for that. And to answer your question, what could be a possible next step is maybe to show us how this information model could be translated into a data model. Just maybe one, so that we can see how it's being mapped down. And I think that would validate it.
Yeah, well, thank you, Thomas. Yeah, I think we've got scope to do that, and I think we've got scope to look at perhaps open sourcing some of the underlying details to make that clearer. So I think that's good feedback, and I think a concrete explanation, a concrete example would make sense. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Thanks, Thomas.
Mahesh Jetanandai. On the question of data model, I went and looked at RFC 8342, which is the Yang model for interface. And of course, there is a definition for in-discards in there. And I'm wondering if the only thing here that might need to be done is to update the description to define more clearly what you're trying to mention in this particular draft. That's just one suggestion. I don't know if we necessarily need a new data model for that.
Yeah. So I think if you look at the underlying detail, there are multiple classes of discards that we break out here. So I think IFN discards is, I would say, the problem that we're solving. So we're not just redefining what IFN discards means, but we're actually breaking discards down so that we can separately report a no root discard from a null root discard, from a congestive loss discard, from an error discard, etc. Because as an operator, what type of discard it is fundamentally changes the actions that you need to take to fix it. You know, very much this is not just a new description on IFN discards. This is very much a new set of discard metrics.
Okay, fair point. And in that case, at least what it means currently in the draft probably will need to be updated to say there is a broader definition, or this is what it includes now, and there is this other model that probably has more reference to the further breakdown of if in discards, as an example.
Well, please, other input to keep me honest. What I'd imagine here is that if we consider this information model, it's saying this is the way that we'd like to report packet discards in terms of the buckets we'd like them to be in and the hierarchy we'd like them to be in, but not the way that we'd explicitly like to expose that. And then, subsequent drafts would actually define, say, for example, how we would expose this in Yang, how we would expose this in IPFix, whichever other methods we choose to use. So I think the idea of the information model in this context is to really define the framework within which we think about how we would like to report this.
Okay.
Thanks, John. As a chair, Diego's comment kind of has been the thing that's keeping me up as to how this moves forward. If you read the guidelines for Yang authors and reviewers, you're using standards track naming in an informational model. So the thing that struck me is I think I'd want more Yang doctors chanting around this to see how this moves forward and what might need to change to adhere to current guidelines. I think this is great work. Don't get me wrong. It's just more of a procedural thing on my part is how do you, I have not seen a Yang. In fact, I think Jürgen did a presentation a while back that said, use UML for information models. And I love, like Diego said, using Yang, but we already have some guidelines here. So I'd like to get more input on how to move this forward so that we're not stepping on process, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. No, I definitely take guidance on that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. So we did the thing, alternate marking information. Welcome, Giuseppe. I'd give you slide control, but now it's not working, so just tell me next slide. It is not. The range is. Yeah. I think it's the range or something.
Okay, yeah, this is an update about the recently adopted draft on the IPFix alternate marking information elements. Yeah, I am presenting on behalf of the co-authors. Next slide. Yeah, just to recap, so we started from the RFC 9343 IPv6 option that define the extension to apply alternate marking to IPv6. And you can find that basically the IPv6 option contains three main elements that are the flow monitor identification, the loss and delay flags. We want to use most of the existing IPFix entities, IPFix information elements for the export of alternate marking data. And yeah, in particular, we use the IP payload packet section to identify the extension headers, while for data correlation and aggregation, we are using existing entities such as source address, both IPv4, IPv6, transport port, protocol identifier, and so on. And we define new flow keys that are flowmon ID, loss flag, and delay flag. And we also define a period ID that is not a flow key, but it is needed for correlation aspects, as explained in the alternate marking deployment draft in IPPM working group. Next slide. For calculation, so for measurement, the packet count can be done using the octet delta count or packet delta count. And for delay, there are different information elements according to the timestamp granularity requirements we can have. In the end, this straightforward document simply requests Yana to create a new registry called IPFix alternate marking to include Flowman ID, loss, delay flag, and period ID. Next slide. Yeah, after the adoption, we had the questions from Med about the operation mode. So to basically suggest you had more clarification for probably for people that are not very familiar with the alternate marking methodology, and I will do that in the next version. So basically, each nodes need to export the packet counters and timestamp at each period of the monitored flow according to the alternate marking operation. And to identify and export this data, it is needed a combination, as I said, of already existing information elements and new information elements that are introduced in this draft. Comments are welcome, and yeah, thank you.
I have a couple minutes if there are any questions or comments. Benoit.
Benoit. So I didn't read the draft. However, what you had in the previous slide about flow keys, that made me thinking, because there is in IPFix what we want from IANA, which is information elements. And there is in IPFix the metering process, how a router should do it, for example. So whenever you say it's a flow key, well, this is not something you need to have in IANA. Yeah. Now, if you want to say for a specific use case, this is how I would define my flows, and some of them would be flow keys, it's different. So I'm going to review your draft with that aspect in mind. Otherwise,
no, yeah. I mean, it can be promoted as flow keys, but they are not flow keys. Basically, are information elements, but they can be promoted. Yeah, it's right. Thank you for the clarification.
More questions? Thanks, Giuseppe.
Okay.
That is the end of the adopted work, and now we're going to get into some individual drafts. First from Med.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. I don't know if I have the control. Okay. Yeah, so this is mainly to present, I would say, the draft about the TATAX IANG model. So just to refresh our minds on, I would say, what we have for mind. We in the working group has done some of the work about the TAGAX and the deal we have with the ISG with progressing some of the specification. So when the working group published, I would say, the RFC 8907, the deal was really clear. This is something which is not secure. We know the flaws of the specification, but the IETF agrees to publish this because we expect that we have more extensions in the future that will, with more, I would say, security improvement over it. But then the working group sent another document to the ISG, but at the time, it's in 2021, by defining the IANG model. And then there is some pushback from the ISG telling that you are asking us to do something which is not deploying TAGAX as it is, but a new extensions. And at that time, Rob, who was the ops area director at the time, made an agreement which is right. That means that yes, we agree with that, but we need some point to start, a starting point so that we can do some feature work on the modeling, and we need to echo what is in the base TAGAX document. So then the ISG accepted to publish the IANG data models for TAGAX, and then I requested the authors to include a warning in the abstract, which is weird for me at the time, and even including something which is some normative text in the abstract, but with nothing, I would say, concrete as actionable in terms of, I would say, you have a requirement there, but you don't know how to do it. But the key point is that in the term of the model itself, there was a lot of discussion at the time how we can graft something and prepare the modeling to host in the future more robust and more secure, I say, flavors of TechX itself, so that we can have something really backward compatible. So we know that what we had in terms of specification is really, I would say, limited in terms of security features, and we promise to provide something which is will be more robust in terms of security functions. So then the question is, why now? And why we need to have to reopen this discussion? I think it's mainly because we have now a good specification in terms of TechX TLS specifications, and it's the last mile if we want to assess whether the provisions we have in terms of specification, in terms of manageability functions, are really adequately covered, are sufficient, or there is something which is really missing in terms of specification that need to be covered in the base specification itself. Blindly reusing the current TLS grouping may import complexity, which may not be that justified. So we need to reassess some of the points and some of the data nodes that are defined in the TLS grouping themselves. So the scope of the current draft is basically to limit it to what we have in the current TechX TLS 1.3. So this is that on terms of the usual functions and some of the I won't reiterate all of them. So those are just I would say listed here in the slide, so you can read them. So when we started doing the exercise of the on assessing in terms of the manageability functions that are in the base specification, there were some gaps. There is some lack of, I would say, explicit behavior of what we intended in terms of implementation. There is a list of items that I have already shared during the working group last call, and that was derived from this work, mainly what should we do when we just configure, for example, an authentication domain name, or when we had bought the list of IP addresses and then a domain name, should we do the resolution of that, or just use it for the as an authentication domain name and so on? How do we really need to have the keep alive at the TLS level for the TechX itself, or we can cover that at the application layer? So all of this we don't have, I would say, clear answers in the current specifications. So and I hope that in the next iteration of the TechX TLS, we will have answers to those gaps. So now for the issues in terms of, I would say, progress in the current modeling of the TLS part of configuration of the TechX. There are 2 points. The first one, whether we continue with the current approach, which is just augmenting the existing one, or we go for a BIS. I personally don't have any a preference on that one. I know that the authors of RFC 9105, they also asked me whether we need to go for ABISA or not. So that's a question for the working group. And the other one, whether we use, I would say, a pruning approach that we have currently in the current version of the draft, rather than blindly reusing the grouping we have in the TLS client server. The main motivation why reusing was not that easy is that we wanted to factorize some of the configuration at the and then call that configuration under the various server instances, and that one was not that easy to do by constraining the data node that are in the grouping models. I guess that these 2 points can be, I would say, we can continue discussion on them. This is not urgent, even if the document is, if the working group accept to adopt it. And this the request I'm making for the working group is to consider adoption of this specification so that we can have something that will fulfill, I would say, what we have promised to the AG in the past. And that's it all from my side.
Questions?
Rob Wilson, Cisco. Thanks, man. I think this is really useful work. I think this is a great thing to be doing. I think it's ideal. So in terms of those things, an augment sounds good to me. I'm not sure about the second one. I would suggest probably just trying to reuse the groupings directly, but I don't know the exact context, but I would like to see this work go forward.
We'll run a poll on adoption. Yeah, we got a few minutes. We'll see if there's interest. As a contributor on one, I mean, I guess it would depend on whether or not the working group adopts it. It seems that Abyss might be ultimately a better approach given the security changes with this. That's just my gut reaction to it, though. But it looks like Hank's going to start up a poll for those of you who have read it or are in support. So, want to?
Yeah, basically, Meet Echo shows you a very simple question. Raise hand means you are in support of an adoption that is an in-room virtual and physical assessment. The actual working group adoption question will be on the list. And meanwhile, Mahesh can use the mic.
Yeah, while people are responding to the poll, Joe, is the poll related to also the question you were asking? Is this a biz or, okay, is that a separate poll?
No, that was just while he was typing, just the thought that came to my mind. This is more about support of adoption, period. Not, ultimately, I think the working group will decide on that first question. I was just giving my contributor opinion.
So we had a good number. I'll give you 10 seconds and then you're out. So, okay, then there's no objection in the room here right now, but there's a significant numbers of so that means that more eyes on that part maybe would be necessary, but we can incorporate these numbers in the adoption call and the summary of the document on the list to remind everybody to have a look. Thank you.
Thanks, Med. What happened? Okay, applying cozy signatures for Yang data provenance.
Diego, no, it's not. Sure, sorry, oh, it's Diego, okay.
Okay, this is going to be brief. Is about the proposal for using cozy signatures for data provenance. Can you move on, please? So the news is that well, since Brisbane, the document has been quite stable. We is what we have achieved. These 4 enclosing methods, etc. And we are trying to progress with the reference implementation. So we make it real and can demonstrate what we are trying to do. There is an annex with examples that have been generated with this reference implementation that for the moment is able to work generating signatures and verifying signatures with 3 of the defined closing methods and using XML. The idea is to extend the whole thing to the 4 enclosing methods or any other that we consider, and to use the 3 encodings that we are considering, XML, JSON, and CIBO. We are working on that, and the plan is to bring a demonstration for the next hackathon. And for that, one of the things that we're looking as well is not only that we have our stuff, but to play with something that can be considered a device or a source of the data. We have started to talk with the people, in particular in FRR, to use an open source implementation so we can play with both sides and demonstrate this, hopefully in Dublin. From the discussion, we have been considering other use cases that are very much related to the accountability and auditability of whatever happens. And when in that discussion today, other cases appear. And looking at ongoing work, I believe that they are connected to this auditability, and when it comes to the concurrency or facilitating and making better the integration with PubSub or Kafka, if you like, and time series DBs. So again, it's about making the whole chain of the production and consumption of the data something that can be auditable. There is a don't worry. That during the discussion with Jan Lindblad, an additional enclosing methods appeared. This is something I have to consider. Now, please.
Sorry.
So basically, the only thing that is open, apart from this, that we are working on that, is the hosting issue. There was some comments whether this belongs to NetMob. This I was thinking whether this could belong to MMOB as well. The point is that we believe this solution addresses an operational issue and is not associated with particular protocols or is even with modeling the network. We are not modeling anything. We are modeling trust, not the network devices. And the idea is that, well, we believe is a rather operational matter. That's why we have different enclosing methods, and what we are trying is to improve how we are monitoring and controlling. So the plan and our intention is to request OPSAWG adoption, though I think that is wiser and more adequate to do this when we have this reference implementation, when we can show some results. Whoever is willing to play with it can play with it and have some feeling. Something that, talking with Jan Lindblad, he had some issues and wanted to discuss. We were thinking about organizing some kind of side meeting, or a direct conversation between us. If any of you are interested, just let me know so we can organize something that is for more than we do. And that's all.
Questions? Yeah. First.
Here comes Matt.
Mahesh, on the question of adoption, did the chairs have a chance to talk to NetMod, and what was the agreement?
Yes. So yesterday, and Diego, I like you a lot. I talked to the NetMod group, the NetMod chairs, and they expressed interest in having this in NetMod. They said they think there is a more than 50% chance it would live there and do well there. So with that in mind, and given the comment you got in 119 at NetMod to come back with the implementation, I think your plan of the hackathon idea is good, and then go to NetMod for adoption there.
Okay. I mean, as I said, I believe it's more operational, but I can live with that. I'm not going to argue about that because I believe that the important thing is that we get that moving on.
Right. And I think you already kind of addressed the question that I had with Jan's comment on using transaction ID to identify the source. I think that's a good idea, but it's a suggestion for you to work out with him and see.
You mean using?
Jan's comment on transaction ID, using transaction
Yeah,
ID.
yeah. That's something, yes. This is something that is ongoing in the discussion with Jan. Yes, is in the list of to-do things that yeah. Apart that, when I updated the draft, there was spotted two Jan errors in the tool, and I had to check them as well. So I didn't mention that because, you know.
Okay, Per Andersson, Cisco. I think this is valuable work. Appreciate that you do it. I'm still surprised that you used the COSI sign one entity instead of COSI sign, so you can only have one signer instead of several. Yeah. And I have commented on this before.
Yeah, I know. And
but let's take that off list and resolve it. I think it's valuable to have multiple signatures.
No, that's something in a moment we thought that it was easier for us, precisely thinking about the reference implementation first, and second, that the idea, if you want to nest several signatures, it would be good to have it in separate elements. That's the main reason for this. We can discuss about that. Thank you.
Kent Watson Networks. So first, with regards to NetMod chair, I think it was more we express willingness, more so than interest. It's about like where would it be best received or reviewed. After sitting with Diego this morning, he presented to me as well, and now listening again, I have to agree that NMOP might be a good spot for it. It does seem more operational. I don't think it affects the Yang modeling language in any specific way. So anyway, it doesn't have to be NMOP. That's now as a contributor. Again, sitting with Diego this morning, he shared with me how the signature, the idea is to move it to canonical format, CBOR, and then do the signature on that. And yet it's the signature is over the content of the document. And I'm just wondering why isn't the signature on the content of the document using whatever encoding it is. So, if you're receiving XML or JSON or CBOR, why don't you just sign that?
I think that this is something that, if we look at the examples, it will be clear. What you're doing is that we are using CBOR because for the computation of the signature or the validation of the signature, we are using COSI, and that's CBOR. And then what we're doing is that for transporting it, we are transforming it, if required, into a base 64. That makes it a little bit longer, but still is concise. That's because one of the idea was, doesn't make any sense if you're sending let's say, half a page of Yang with 2 pages of signature. That's something that sounds a little bit like throwing the baby with the bathwater. That was the main reason for using COSI. It's extremely powerful in that sense in making it compact. And then when you use base 64, it's a little bit longer, but only a little bit. With examples, again, this is why I wanted to bring the initial implementation to this meeting to show how it works, because I think that is a typical thing that when you see it at play, is easier to understand.
Okay, and I only come to that opinion thinking about technology stacks, and if I don't have CBOR in my technology stack, I would have to introduce it to my technology stack just to get a signature. So that's where I'm coming from.
No, again, if we can find an alternative way of making concise signatures, I will have a check. Recently, I see this is AHOC or something like that is being discussed inside here in the IETF. And I have, again, in my two review list to have a look at it and see whether it could be applicable. So, well, we're talking doubling. That's my take, right?
Thanks, Diego. In terms of what Kent just said about adoption, I think we'll talk with NMOP. We'll find a home. I think there's clearly interest in this work.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're right in time again.
Yay. Yang data model for scheduled OAM. Luis. Victor. Victor's presenting.
Hi, I'm Victor Lopez from Nokia. Yeah. So I'm the aim of this work is essentially to cover the configuration of and to manage the life cycle of OEM test in a network-wide basis. Okay. So the main problem that there is with OEM is that you have to take into account different aspects during the creation of the test. You have to configure, for example, in the case of Twilight, a reflector. You have to create the source or trigger the source of the test in order to reach this reflector and the result to come back again. And the aim that we have with this work is to extend or to create a model adding the status of this test and also scheduling parameters for the OEM test. Our aim is not to redo the wheel and redefine again OEM models that they have already been defined in IETF, but to reuse them. So the proposal that we are bringing to the working group comes with 2 main ideas. One of them is the concept of the OEM unitary test. That is, I want to, for example, create a loopback test from A to B. And the second concept is the OEM test sequence, where essentially it will be to concatenate and to define first I want to do, 3 loopback tests or a link trace, later measure the delay and measure the delay after that.
Victor, did you want to take any questions in the queue now, or you want to wait till the end?
I can take them now, no problem.
Greg?
Greg Mirsky, Ericsson. This is very interesting work. I have like two-part question. It seems that you mentioned TWAMP wide. The fact is that TWAMP wide is non-standard, and the TWAMP model does not allow to control TWAMP wide because TWAMP is a concatenation of control protocol and the test plane. So I think that you can look at the model and see whether it's really applicable to your case. The second is that IPPM working group is to conclude, and I'm guilty of dragging too long, the data model for STAMP protocol, which is evolution of TWAMP family or WAMP family. And it already has ability of scheduling repetition of sequences and reporting some. But I'll appreciate you taking a look at sharing your thoughts and comments to the ops area and IPPM working group.
Perfect.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you for the feedback. We will have a look into STAMP. The aim of this model is to be, let's say, generic. I was trying to use examples, so we could cover, let's say, any other OEM technique. So the use cases that, in this case, the other co-author, Luis from Telefónica, was targeting are the four that we can see here. So the first one is troubleshooting. So in the case that there is an issue on the network to trigger OEM unitary tests or a test sequence in order to find where the problem is. The second is a birth certificate, where after provisioning a service, you want to measure the quality of the service. So you provide a report after the delivery of this service. Proactive supervision is used to monitor the SLAs that you can have with a third party that you are selling a service. And the fourth use case where we believe that this scheduling of OEM tests can be useful is for path computation element scenarios. This work was already presented in 2 IETFs ago. The work that we have been doing is to add the references to the network incident effort that is being done in MMOP. Also, we have been working on the YAM trees and to improve the model. And we are reusing the work in NetMod for the scheduling. So essentially, we are importing the module that is defined in NetMod, and we have been updating and aligning the draft with this work. Finally, we have added a section, and I will comment on this in the next slide, to see which is the proposal or how we can use the device models within the OEM scheduling model. In order to explain we wanted to have feedback from the working group, from the audience here, and Jan was before talking about the Jan full integrate approach or the schema mount, is in the way that we are defining the unitary test, as you can see on the slide, there is an area that we just have a placeholder, it's called test type. And in this test type area, we would like to embed or import the other models that are defined in IETF. STAMP can be one example, Ethernet CFM or any other test type. So this way, in this work, we won't have to redefine the OEM configuration, but just say, hey, I want to create a test type Ethernet CFM with a given periodicity, with this recurrence. And also, we are adding a state machine to present which is the status of this test, if it is running, if it is stopped, or if it has finished. So thanks to the comment of Benoit, I think that partially I got an answer of how we can tackle this test type. And maybe we should follow the schema mount approach instead of using the full include due to the conversation that we are having in NetMod. So if unless there is a different feedback, what we will do is to update the draft with this approach, with the schema mount, and in the next IETF, we will present it to the working group. You can move to slides.
2 slides?
Yeah. So essentially, the objective of today's session is to collect your feedback, see if the work is of interest. Also, we had this modeling issue with the schema mount and the YAM full integrate that we will work with the schema mount. Also, we got comments from Mete in the mailing list. First version I have already included in the GitHub that we are working. And what we will do is to prepare a new version for the next IETF and keep refining the model. So that's all I have for today. Thank you.
I'll raise my hand. I have a question. As a contributor, so you addressed what your placeholder meant, because I read the draft and like, what are they planning to do there? Thank you. Why is the state machine read write?
Yeah, it will be read. Yeah.
Okay, so the intent is the state machine will be updated as the test runs. You don't manually set the state machine.
Yeah, there are the state. It should be read just to say what is the status, but you need to start the test and stop it. So there are some intermediate tests that you may have to work on it. So yeah, I will think. I need to think about it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Where are we? Scheduling and.
Hello, this is Paul Zhang. I'm from SKKU. So today I will introduce intent-based management framework for software-defined vehicle in ITS. Next slide, please. So this is the outline. Next. So basically, the software-defined vehicle is nowadays very famous. So it is based on a native cloud and operating system like a smartphone. Next slide. So in the industry, especially Eclipse SDV is a standard body for the development of software-defined vehicle framework. Currently, you can see they are using the network function virtualization concept and the native cloud. Next. Also, OPSAWG is automotive open architecture for software platform. So basically, they can provide some platform to develop the application based on the operating system for automotive vehicle. Basically, they provide the OPSAWG Classic for control the ECU and OPSAWG adaptive platform for development for AI, machine learning related some intelligence application development. Next slide. So also the SOPI also another standard open source project. They providing scalable open architecture for embedded edge like software-defined vehicle edge computing system. Next slide. So you can see in the past the automotive car is using distributed architecture like the electronic control unit connected by the controlled area network like CMP. Nowadays, you can see right-hand side, you can see the vehicle is transit to a centralized also zone architecture. So zone controlled ECU like the automotive, the mechanics. However, HPC, high performance computer, are providing some more intelligent computing system for some autonomous driving, etc. Next slide. So this draft is trying to propose how to configure and how to manage the automotive software-defined vehicle. Especially, you can see figure 1 case shows the vehicular network architecture, and the figure 5 is showing in-vehicle network. So nowadays, the in-vehicle network is consist of the gigabit Ethernet rather than CMP or FlexLay. Next slide, right, please. So you can see nowadays the OPSAWG and SOPI and Eclipse SDV, they are working together to develop architecture for software-defined vehicle platform. So you can see in the middle we have a real-time operating system, and also it providing application like some intelligent, like some adaptive driving, advanced driving assistance system for autonomous driving system. Next slide. So the NMRC published the RFC about intent-based management, like life cycle of intent-based system. So our proposal, this draft explain how to adapt that concept into SDV IBS system. Next slide. So the main slide, we propose software framework developed for SDB. So we have two parts. The upper side is the vehicle cloud control, the SDB, and a bottom figure is software-defined vehicle itself. So our goal is we try to identify the important system components and the interfaces. If we driver want some autonomous driving, the intent is given to the SDB user. It can translate into a specific policy and then deliver some safe driver for autonomous driving or navigate for human driver. Next slide. So our goal is we try to identify a system component, but also we want to identify the interface. Eventually, if this working group agree on this draft, we try to develop a young data model for important interfaces. Next slide, please. So also the application based on this one, I believe nowadays the SDB is very important. IETF also I suggest to pay attention SDB because many automotive vendor they invest this one. So IETF also needed to prepare this kind of some the future demanding standardization. Next slide. So last hackathon, IETF 120, last Sunday, my student and I and collaborate, we prove a concept using hackathon project. In the figure, we shows the SDB, the administrator, SDB user make some intent like want to monitor SDB, like a speed, direction, something like that. That information is delivered to SDB through SDB some edge computing, and then they can report their some monitoring data to cloud analyzer, and then they can diagnose it runtime, and then they give some good feedback for safety. Next slide. So this is a last slide. So our authors want to polish up this one. Also, we can enhance this one. Especially last day, I submitted to another the draft, more generalized this framework interface. It is called the interface to in-network functions, I2INF. So I would like to ask you guys to read this draft and give feedback. I hope we can make some progress this SDV and in-network computing sites in this OPSA working group. Thank you for your listening. Any question, comments?
As chair, so this work, I didn't see any comments on the list, any discussion. I don't know if there is, if the, I wouldn't say interest, if there's knowledge or if there's domain expertise in Ops Area Working Group around this area. If there is interest, we would like to see that discussion, obviously, on the list. And you know, we can also look to see where if there might be a better fit for some of this work. Certainly, what I was thinking, just as a contributor, as I look through the slides, how much of this is very specific to the vehicle area versus standard or more traditional challenges that you would have in managing a network connected device. But before we move or even consider adoption, we'd want to see more input from the list. And
sure.
Mahesh.
Yeah. So I said interface to in-network computing a draft case. We consider CoinRG some configuration. I think that is more comfortable for our group. This SDB is more specific example. So I try to that draft to try to more generalized. So this one can be merged. And then that case, I think our group can contribute. So please, read the interface to in network function draft, problem statement, and the framework, and then we can discuss in
Mahesh, it might be good for you to go to the Ops Area Working Group at IETF.org and say that, and be very clear what you want, what discussion you want on the list.
Okay, sure. Okay, go ahead.
Mahesh, I wanted to echo Joe's comment that I think one way to kind of skin this cat would be to maybe break this work out into pieces where the specific management piece is something you can bring to ops or any of the other working groups, whereas the specifics of what the software-defined vehicle pieces are taken somewhere else, where probably there's a better
Okay.
fit for it.
Okay.
That
Okay. Thank you.
would
Yeah.
be my
Yeah.
suggestion.
Okay. Thank you. So anything else? Okay. So this is the first introduction. Probably, yeah, that we can discuss in Melanist more. Okay.
Please do. Thank you, Jim.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
And resource Yang data model for resource performance monitoring. Ming Shuang.
Am I heard, Joe?
We can hear you barely. Oh, I can hear you barely. Maybe the room has more audio. No, please speak up, please.
Oh, let me turn on the audio. Is it better now?
Oh yeah, much better now.
Okay, let's start. Hi guys, this is Ming Shuang from Huawei. The work, I can control the slides now, right, Joe?
Yep, you have control of the slides.
Yeah. The work we present today is a young data model for resource performance monitoring. Okay. The document originally focused on resource PM in optical domain. So it is a CCAM draft. And recently, we generalized the model for both IP and optical domain. During this IETF, we'll present the work in both CCAM and OPSAWG to seek for more comments and feedbacks. First, oh, Joe, this is the old version slides.
Yeah,
And
okay. Yeah,
and
I uploaded it to Data
would you
Tracker.
please
So
play the new version?
Hold on, let's see.
Thanks.
Oh, well, my connection died. Okay.
I stop the slides now.
Hold on.
And you may reload the slides.
Oh, revision 1. Okay. Let me do that. Well, it didn't. There it is. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah. This is the new version. Thank you. Thank you, Joe. First, here's an example to illustrate the model usage in a scenario of service degradation analysis. As we know, when service degrades, it is essential to find out and confirm the root cause quickly. So the service disruption and users compliance is avoided. As we know, service degradation may be caused by different kinds of faults and degradations on different devices in IP and optical domain. So in this example, when the OSS noticed that the packet loss of an L3 VPN service is too much, crossing threshold, it has to query the performance data of both IP and optical devices to analyze the root cause of the problem. Here we can see the error packet number of interface 1 on device P is increased, and the received optical power of termination point 1 on device O2 reduced during the past hour. Based on the correlation analysis, it comes out that the root cause is fiber degradation between device O1 and device O2. And then a ticket could be dispatched to repair the fiber degradation problem. Also, we noticed that if an incident notification directly indicate the root cause, then in step 2, the engineer only have to query the performance data to confirm the correctness of the root cause and directly perform step 4. For multi-domain operation scenarios, such as the example we just mentioned, we noticed that there's no uniform model for PM data retrieval in IP and optical domains. In addition, there's no uniform model for TCA configuration, leading to high integration and operating cost. The model we propose could provide uniform PM mechanism for both IP and optical domain, enabling efficient operation and maintenance, and also enabling performance visibility for troubleshooting in multi-domain, multi-layer network. As we can see in the picture, for IP domain, our model can provide the PM capabilities that VPN PM model have not covered yet. For example, the CPU usage or the memory usage of a network element. For optical domain, our model enables the PM capabilities for optical resources. For example, monitor the input and received optical power of a termination point. In addition, a TCA module is defined to enable automatically alarm generation or clearing when performance data satisfy the defined threshold. In the model, we use resources to describe the supported resources and performance indicators. Here, indicator name is defined as string type, so it is compatible for extension of new indicators. And then we define TCA management, where the profile enables predefining the TCA configuration for specified indicators of a resource. In TCA, a predefined profile could be applied to specific resource, or configurations could be set directly on demand. And monitoring task is defined with administrators to control PM status, the PM task status. And in addition, the first RPC we defined is used to enable the current or history PM data retrieval. The second RPC is used to clear PM data of specified resources. And the third RPC is used to get resources that have been associated with specified TCA profile. And that's all for my presentation. So any comments or questions are welcome. Thank you.
Rob.
Rob Wilson, Cisco. So I wanted to know if this is in any way related to the SANE architecture that this working group has published. If it's sort of an overlap and doing something similar, or this is solving a different problem. So I'd like to invite Benoit up to the mic. So he's got any thoughts?
He's inviting you up to the mic.
Let the author give some opinion.
It doesn't sound like Benoit has an opinion at this point.
Okay.
So you brought this out of CCamp, and I know this isn't an NMOPS charter. You brought it here. I guess we have a few minutes for a poll. Is there interest in working on this? You haven't asked for adoption, but is there interest in working on this in Ops Area Working Group? I can hear my co-chair frantically typing.
Yeah, some icons overlay my text that I'm typing, so I can't see it. I guess this is correct. Yes.
So raise your hand if you have an interest in working on this, if you are interested in this from an ops area perspective. Yeah. Rob, back in the queue.
I was just going to say, I find this hard to answer because if this is like a different version of the same architecture which we've already published, then and that could already cover this, then my answer would be I don't think we need another one of these. But I'd like to understand what the difference would be. If it's something different, then maybe it has more interest. So I think it's understanding how this fits in with what we've already published.
Yeah, so the poll seems overwhelmingly, for those who did answer, no opinion. So I think what we need to see is some more discussion. The question brought up from Rob was, how does SANE, the service assurance for intent-based networking architecture, fit into this, or how does this relate? And maybe that's something that can be discussed on the list, but there would need to be a little bit more interest / willingness to move this forward. And this did come up fairly late in the sequence, so we didn't see any mailing list activity. So we want to see more of that to gauge working group interest. But I will let the record show that no one in this room or online was opposed to working on this, and there were some yeses. In some interest here. So we just want to see those yeses reflected in substantive discussion on list. And with that,
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ming Shuang. With that, we conclude Ops Area Working Group section of our program, and we invite our area directors up for the Ops Area piece. Do you want me to continue to run the slides, or do you? Okay.
All right. So I'll cover some of the management piece, and I'll have Warren do the operation side of it. The topic really is the IIB workshop that Benoit is going to talk about. If you know operators and friends who are operators, please do encourage them to participate in some of the pre-events that will be announced, and the final workshop in December. The announcement of it should be coming out fairly soon. It's in the first week of December. So that was one. The other announcement that I have is relates to a work group forming BOF that is tomorrow, relates to green and energy management. That's at 1 p.m. So if you're interested in that piece of the work, do participate in the BOF session tomorrow. Over to you, Warren.
I guess I'll just mention I've said it before and I'll say it again. If you're interested in running for OPSAWG, please come along and talk to me. More than happy to provide info on what it's like. It's a lot of fun. It is entertaining. It's a crap load of work, but it's actually worthwhile and fun to do. So, the NOMCOM is going to be looking for candidates.
Yep.
Benoit, I think that's your cue.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, Cleveland.
So this session is about a new IAB workshop called Next Era of Network Management Operation, NEMOPS. We've got many MOPS. So if you come back to the previous slide, if you want me to run the clicker, up to you, you decide. No, that's fine, okay,
yeah,
I trust you. So there are many people involved, and we're going to see why. People from the NetMop working group, people from the IAB, and Mahesh as OPSAWG. So management AD, sorry. Yes. So the way to recognize is the one in Ops has got a funny hat. Okay. On the next slide. So in 2022, the IAB organized a workshop, and the goal of that was to establish a dialogue and I see people smiling, some of them were in that workshop. So to establish a dialogue between network operators and protocol developers to guide the IETF on basically what to do and what not to do. So out of that, there were a series of operator requirements in RFC 4545. And if you're dealing with automation, that's something that you should be reviewing over and over, because those requirements there are pretty good. Now, if we pick some of them, you know, number 2, it's necessary to make a clear distinction between config data and operational data, right? It's number 4. It's necessary to enable operators to concentrate on the config of the network as a whole. So all of these led to a couple of things in the IETF, right? Service model and Yang and netconf. So on the next slide, there was also a series of recommendations for the IETF. So which one is interesting? First one, recommends that the IETF stop forcing working groups to provide writable MIPS. And there were a clear explanation in the document telling it's too complex to create those MIPS, right? As a consequence, there was an IAG statement, stop doing that, right? So we could go on and on, but the point on the next slide is that that workshop was the basis for the creation of the netconf working group and the resconf protocol and the Yang and all of the derivation of it, right? The module, in the end, the telemetry, the service model, the NMDA to get operational data. So maybe slowly, but we've been listening, right? 22 years. Now here is like on the next slide, why I mentioned different people involved. When NMOP was created, there are 4 big topics in there. The last one is consider and plan an approach for updating RFC 4545 bis. So collecting operators' requirements and recommendation. So this is where we started this IAB description. Now, on the next slide, please. So what is the goal of this? First of all, this is to make a kind of state of the union. Review the outcomes of what happened and identify operational barriers that prevents technologies from being widely implemented. So if someone, for a good reason, would say, you know, this entire Yang stuff is crap, we need to invent something new, we want to listen to that. It's an unlikely outcome, but we want to listen to operators telling why it's difficult. And maybe things such as OpenConfig will come up. This is fine, we have to listen to people, right? So there are things that are outside of even the IETF. So the next point is to sketch new requirements. If I'm an operator right now, what are the biggest issues that I have? Maybe this is like data collection that we see also in NMOP. Maybe this is like, I don't know, you tell me if you're an operator. And the idea behind this workshop is to, exactly like years ago, to have a plan action and recommendation for the IETF, right? So the way that an IAB workshop works is that there is a kind of submission paper that you do to be invited to the workshop. And that's the way it's going to happen. On the next slide, let me go to the last point. We have to recognize that there is less operators in the IETF than we had like 22 years ago, even if personally I'm happy to see more operators in the ops area of the IETF, and those operators are getting to self-organized. So that makes me happy, but maybe we don't have all the operators in the world. So we need to do an outreach effort to go and say, and go and to ask the question to the operators. I've seen too many times like, can you please come and work in my place with my process to get an IETF draft to basically work? And for some operators, it's just not the way it works if you're going to ask them to write in a draft. So we're going to RIPE. We're going to go to Nanog. We're going to go to AutoCon. Actually, we went there. Mahesh went to AutoCon. I will go to RIPE. We discussed with Miriam. I'm not sure if she's here. She's a RIPE chair. We're going to have a session in the plenary, 15-minute session. We're going to have a table there and collecting feedback from operators. And for the people who don't want to just come to the IETF workshop or even publish like a paper, we're going to collect the feedback and give it to the workshop. Now, coming to the top part, decision topic. It might be tooling. Sometimes we don't enable a specific protocol because there is no tooling, there is no library. It could be proof of concept, multi-vendor, data consistency, right? To support richer observability, the data and the knowledge. It could be integration with business layer. Anything which is autonomy, orchestration, automation, right? So there is like an announcement. So this will be announced very soon. So this is currently finalizing the details. This morning, there was an IAB breakfast where the agreement is that we're going to post this on the tracker by the end of the week, the full description. Now, this is the mailing list on the second bullet points that you want to subscribe to get the official news. Don't worry, it's going to be sent to many different places, right? In RIPE, for example, we agreed to have a block over there. We agreed to send information in advance, okay? So the workshop will be taking place. These are the tentative dates in blue there, December 3rd, 4th, 5th. You have in there the program committee to be defined, right? So we're discussing this right now. What is pretty stable is the description there in this bullet point, which is public if you want to read it. But we're going to make it final before the end of the week, right? And from there, you could see if you want to participate. So I think the key message is that if you are an operator, if you are a protocol designer, we want to hear from you on how we could do better. Now, we know it. When I'll go to RIPE and say, what's wrong with the IETF? I'm going to receive tomatoes. That's fine, right? But in the end, can I extract something which is actionable to do better in the future? Whether this is a tiny thing or this is for Mahesh to create a new working group on something, we'll see. So that's basically my message. Stay tuned for this announcement by the end of the week. Any feedback, question, or?
Sorry, my phone left there. I should be in the queue.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you will send a couple of reminders to OPSAWG mailing list as well, just before it.
Everywhere. to Diego and everywhere.
I am not an ops area director, so I wanted to take this as a contributor. Two questions. On a few slides back, you said you have to submit a paper to be invited. Can anyone who doesn't submit a paper still show up to listen in?
We have to make a distinction between how an IAB workshop works, and it works with contribution, and we have also to be very realistic. And so I don't expect it to be a hard requirement. As I mentioned, if you're an operator and you have to write like a full paper, it's not going to work. Okay. So I believe that there is theory and there is practice.
Okay. And what would change those dates? Well, you said they're to be determined, so I don't know what is waiting to finalize the dates.
Just the IAB pressing the button, telling
okay.
these are those dates. That's it.
Hi, Benoit. Hi, everyone. So, Laurent speaking as NMRG co-chair too, I will say, what role could you expect also from the research community, or is it broader than purely engineering IETF operator and short-term view of this to be, I mean, to take part, to help, to support into that as input to the discussion? And also when you mentioned the outreach, so you mentioned a lot of operator group, which I fully support. There are, as you know, also other industry events, scientific events where quite a number of operators are also attending. So do you expect also to outreach to them, or any support to, or plans to also outreach them? So these two questions.
So the first question about the RTF and specific NMRG is a pretty good one. This is exactly why we did not press the button at this breakfast this morning, because we know the distinction between IETF and RRTF. The people outside, they don't care. They don't see like how we distinguish between an NMRG and an OPSAWG. So this is one of the extra sentences in the last one. We have to mention the distinction between what is more long-term, NMRG, and what is more protocol specification. And this was the exact reason why we have not pressed the button now. We'll make that distinction. Now, what is the role of NMRG? So what we want to say as well is that if the feedback is, I want to use my LLM to save the world and run my network, so this is maybe a little bit too researchy. So what we concluded this morning is that we'll accept all the feedback, but whenever we arrive here, we're going to triage what should be more IRTF and MRG and the IETF. That makes sense for the first answer? And somehow that answers as well your second question, because yes, we could go to many conferences, right? Research conferences, but what is RTF and what is IETF? So ideally, if we don't want to get so diverse feedback, you know, the LLM with self-healing network, whatever, I press a button, it works. This is like a bit too researchy.
Okay, just maybe a feedback on what you say. I agree with this distinction of short-term, long-term research, more engineering positioning, which I think is fair and healthy. Still, since evolution of network management, I think we should also reflect on maybe past failures or attempts that were not successful, and try also to make sure that everything that we want to engage, especially on the IETF side, actually address things that are coming, not just the immediate thing that we see and, let's say, the next young evolution, but there are a bit of more trends that will transform networks to some extent. And if we don't capture that, partly at least, I think in this initiative, then maybe in a few years we will say, yeah, we have to do it again. So just try to be mindful into capturing the right set of what is coming next as part of practical thing we can do short term in the IETF.
Good feedback. Yes, Diego, we'll send you an email.
Yeah. Well, I just subscribed to the list, just in case. No, seriously, just it's a extremely practical thing. We were talking while you were, whether it would make more sense to present a joint contribution by all the people that from Telefonica that are here, or it would be better, in practical terms, to have individual ones. Just, what do you think?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Later on, I'll tell you a story about Franco and yes.
Rüdiger Volk. I just wanted to reinforce Benoit's remark that the rules should be interpreted liberally. I'm sure I would not have had the chance to survive the 2002 workshop if I had been asked to submit papers. And actually, I think the rules for admission were at that time, well, okay, you had to be invited. And inviting the right people is really hard. But, well, okay, for the invitations here, I think you should think about how to make clear that you are really as
Inclusive.
liberal as and encouraging to operators to come without extra burdens. In particular, if you go outside or advertising outside of IETF proper. People who are in the other venues are very unlikely to really want to deliver even one-page papers.
You're fully right.
Mahesh, I wanted to just follow on the comment of the distinction between NMRG and what this workshop is trying to do. This question of why not AI, for example, came up in the meeting earlier today. Why are we not mentioning the fact of use of AI in network management? That's a fair question, except that this workshop is actually about collecting requirements from the operator. We are not trying to go with an opinion and say, this is what we think network management should look like. This is really an open mic kind of thing where we are looking for input from the operators. And that's why I think the distinction between what NMRG is trying to do and what this workshop is trying to do.
Mahesh, you've seen like the description. Do you believe this is sufficiently described in this GitHub over there? So don't have to answer now, but maybe that's something you want to check, but that's a very good point.
Right. I think the description of the workshop is in fairly good shape, except for the few tweaks that you mentioned. We do want to make that distinction between what is happening in MRG and what this workshop is going to try to focus on.
Thank you.
Hi, Oscar Gonzalez, Telefónica. My question is about these external organizations. If you just plan to, well, it's a formal invite, or you expect more, let's say, formal input, for example, from TM Forum, which is very close relationship. You mentioned some in your points before about the network management work and the relationships with the orchestration layers and so on, which are typically not done here in IETF. They are done outside IETF. Do you expect more formal participation from those or not? Or
So I'll answer for myself, right? This is a collective effort. Maybe we'll have to brainstorm on this. But my personal answer is that if we go and reach out to different SDOs, they're going to try to convince you that this is the direction they should be going. If I go to TMF, if I go to BBF, if I go to 3GPP, and actually we might be losing the operator requirements. And to me, it's more important to get the operator's requirements actually regardless of wherever it's done in SDO. Because if something is specific to 3GPP, it should be done over there, right? So I'm slightly concerned if we start to have like SDO's communication. Because I ask myself, what is, if I put myself in the shoes of the person I talk to, is going to try to sell me is whatever vision. But I care about the operators. So this is my reaction to it.
Dan Voyer, Canada. I think it's my cue, Ben. You've been coaching me to come here at the mic a few times for operators. It's very hard to have operators' requirement in this world where there's too many works in parallel and it's very messy. And then we're not able to get things done. You know, the fail fast approach type of thing. So the NMAP should reinforce maybe to start small, one chunk at a time, and be very, very precise with the problem. Even though the problem might not always be clear, but give it a shot with some overview and some guideline. But it's very hard in this because it takes too long to try something, get feedback, to know are we on the right track or not. So the only, I would say, guide that we have, if you put 200 operators in the same room, and then you ask how much is automated in your network, the percentage, it's not 100, it's not 70%, it's not 60%, it's mostly 20%. And why is that? What's wrong? Is it, it's not always human pushing back. It's sometimes the technology is really not there because there's too many different paths. So that's maybe the NMAP is the place where we should go and let the operator put on paper what they think they have as a problem, and then officialize that, and then focus or refocus some work. Sometimes we have to say no to some branch and just stay focused all the way till the end. That's my 2 points.
I agree with that. So I like NMAP because there are multiple times the charter we mention experiments, which means that out of the couple of topics there, it's going to take a couple of IETF hackathon and code, and then we know if it's working. So I agree with you on a step-by-step, and I agree with a strong connection with NMAP. Now, the State of the Union 22 years ago, maybe there is something bigger than just the things that we are tackling in NMAP.
And to respond to Dan's comment, absolutely, we love the input that the operators are giving and are going to give to NMAP. We absolutely welcome that. But as Benoit noted, we have seen a steady decline of operators' participation in IETF. And this effort before the workshop, the outreach effort at least, is to go out and actually encourage that operator input so that when the workshop actually happens in December, we have had at least made an effort to reach out and tell the operators, hey, there is a workshop here. If you don't want to come to NMAP, here's the other opportunity to participate.
Well, I think it's the way to go.
I like this final word.
Don't look at me there. I'm just a slide guy right now.
Thank you.
Warren, Mahesh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So open mic. Remaining time is on the presentation.
Unless like everybody's done with your questions, right? I just checking. I was just like, I want to make sure I'm not kicking you out. Did I kick him out without paying attention?
It's a different topic. That's why I come here.
Okay. So open mic, any questions for Ops area?
It's more of a remark. So you were mentioning the Ops Directorate, right?
Yes.
You're asking for more people. And I want to add one thing to this is that it might be a little bit scary whenever you have to say to people, this is the way it's going to work. This is what I believe should be happening. But something that you must know is that you provide feedback to the AD. And the AD is somehow responsible to follow up. So it's not because you say the document should look like this, or this, that it's a big distinction. You're not, what's the right term in English? Not liable to make it happen. You give the feedback to the AD. And that might be easing the entrance level for Ops Directorate. That's what I want to say.
And yeah, thank you. That's a really good point. I mean, the Ops Directorate reviews usually start for like, these should be treated like any other last call comment, something. And it's the AD's responsibility to chase up with them. They're also ridiculously useful. It's ADs read all the documents or try and read all the documents, but sometimes, especially on a Wednesday night, when you're trying to get through the last document, you're like, and you open the Ops Directorate review and they're like, this section looks a little sketchy, and then you know to focus there. So yeah, Ops Directorate is really, really helpful. It's also a very good way to gain some experience with, document review if you're thinking of running for other positions. It also, if you do Ops reviews, people are much more likely to review your documents. So as with all IETF stuff, you help out some people, they'll help you out later with reviews. Any other questions and comments? Nothing? Going once, going twice. Okie dokie.
It's designed.
Thank you all, and see you in Dublin, hopefully.
Meet Echo always has a new feature. Now I have jittery names.
Oh, jittery names.
Why not? I mean, sure.
Yeah.